40 years ago, the computer changed the way news organizations managed their work in major ways. Newspapers passed much of the work for keeping content accurate and clear from editors to reporters. The Internet created a bold new platform for information, disrupting both economic support for the media and their ways of handling news. The cascade of technology tools that allows us to access the world anywhere in any situation has enthralled a generation of young users, leaving traditional media struggling to adjust to the changes. The traditional or mainstream media are buffeted by the move of advertising revenue to the Internet and the flight of users to the attractive, entertaining, and sometimes addictive new technology. Our interest is in those ethical values that once were the backbone of news gathering and presentation. The first part of this lesson tells about some of these changes. The second part asks you to think about three values of this course: privacy, truth, and fairness, and to assess how they are faring as the media rapidly evolve. News junkies still turn to traditional newspaper and television websites in big numbers, but that media time is shared with a universe of relatively new sources of information. That information is accessible, packaged with moving images and colorful graphics, and constantly updated. News aggregators, sites that collect what many other sites report, spare us the time to search out our favorite news sources. The Internet and inexpensive or free programs gave birth to the blogosphere, the millions of single voices expressed about all possible subjects. While traditional media worked to define the blog as a more personalized form of conventional journalism, people who blogged forged a platform of infinite variety. News sites staffed by a single person, sometimes unpaid, elevated next door to a legitimate news subject, and embarrassed newspapers and television stations into paying attention to the diversity of their communities, not just the tragedies. Sites that encouraged individuals to share information exploded in the past decade. Without thinking of ourselves as journalists, we share information readily and widely through Twitter and Facebook as examples, and our rarely professional video work goes global on YouTube. Every one of us has the potential to be a journalist, and if we need information beyond what we've heard, observed, or thought, we turn to wikis that have replaced encyclopedias, or to Google, Bing, and other superpowered gatherers of Internet information. We exaggerate these changes by saying we are all journalists now, or communication has achieved pure democracy. But the digital world has eroded that once stable consensus about news ethics. The new journalism of our time wants to be inclusive, to enable people of all ages, identities, and interests to have their say. Yes, there is no guarantee that anyone will hear a particular voice or read its arguments, but like the lottery, anyone can be a winner. A YouTube video may go viral, attract attention so fast that millions see it, and conventional news media make that event newsworthy. Today's digital journalism scorns the single experienced observer for the multitude of details that inexperienced observers will contribute. Twitter encourages distributing tiny morsels of thought or fact, and also fosters a hierarchy of voices, sorted evidently by crowd decisions about who is worth following. Digital journalism does indeed produce some amazing disclosures, and we should be encouraged that so many of us have access to an audience, albeit sometimes a minute one. The question this course addresses is how ethical values survive when fewer and fewer communicators attend at all to ethical standards. We need new tests for truth in the context of ubiquitous communication. Traditional media often make mistakes, but they observe a standard of accuracy that gives us modest confidence in what we see and hear. I say modest confidence because even skilled journalists vary a great deal in how carefully or thoroughly they review their work for accuracy. When false or misleading information is printed or broadcast, we are often able to trace the error to a media source and then to editors or staff members. Time was on the side of media that published once a day or broadcast a particular news show once a day. Today's audience-generated news environment is constant, immediate, and largely insensitive to how much truth is respected. The rapid shrinking of time available for managing news seriously undermines accuracy. Moreover, it is often hard to learn where the information came from. The advocates of this new journalism say they are checking each other, and egregious errors will be discovered. We don't yet know if this is working at all, and we shouldn't be placing a lot of confidence in it. Fairness in communication is no longer a role solely of professional groups in higher education. Excesses of the traditional media, and they are dotted throughout its history, were often checked by groups or institutions vested with an interest in media integrity. Press councils, journalism reviews, trade associations, media commentators, competitors sometimes, journalism schools, and those who were offended. In general, public checks on media ethics are inherently weak and poorly publicized. Now, scrutiny of fairness has moved out of elite groups into the universe of social media. Against the tide of messages unaffected by ideas about social justice, the capacity of audience members to cry foul when someone is subjected to prejudice is a positive development. However, social media also give free rein to those determined to bully, harass, or vilify others. We know small children bully and suffer bullying, and the aggression continues throughout school years and into adult life. We learn about some of the worst offenders, but our technology and our personal fears too often shield the violators. In Lesson 3, I discussed privacy both as a condition of our lives essential to our emotional health and as a rhetorical claim often associated with income or status. That first idea of privacy speaks to a skill we learn as children and develop as we mature, deciding what information about ourselves should be kept to ourselves, what information can be shared with those close to us, and what we can make public. Until recently, those choices were most heavily influenced by family, school, neighborhoods, and co-workers. Now, with a preoccupation with social media, it is clear that the appeal of sharing the core knowledge about ourselves with large numbers of people is eroding those traditional boundaries between public and private. Our willingness to let scores of people follow our actions and thoughts means that we may care less about privacy and more about being defined by our followers. If we are sharing so much that our autonomy is weakened, we should be concerned about how we use social media. In the context of this course, the changing sense of privacy appears to encourage those gathering private details for public disclosure. Attention to transparency is fading as everyone can become a journalist or at least a communicator. Mainstream media vary greatly in their willingness to disclose to the public how they made mistakes or how they reached certain decisions that angered or provoked their audiences. A resourceful person, though, can work through levels of oversight to learn about the reporting process. Social media disclosures are not always backed by relevant details about the source or accuracy of the message. It is sometimes futile to try to reach a blogger. A student in this course once tried to reach the author of a popular religious blog and was curtly told that he had no time to answer questions. Though you can tweet back to a tweeter, getting at the way information was gathered and processed can be discouraging. I want you now to read about a newspaper's experiment in blogging from a murder trial. Blogging and tweeting from events as they unfold have become common, providing a new kind of journalism focused on the moment, rather than summarizing events over longer periods. The Seattle Times used reporter and citizen tweets to cover a hunt for a man who had murdered 4 police officers.